You think you know the story of the Crusades, Jerusalem under siege, a masked king, and Saladin marching toward destiny. But the moment that haunted the crew the most wasn't a battle at all. It was the day Baldwin IV stepped onto the set. When the silver mask appeared, the entire crew fell silent. For a moment, they weren't looking at an actor. They were staring at a king dead for 800 years, suddenly alive again. History didn't feel reenacted, it felt resurrected. Today, we're counting down 10 weird facts that reveal what Ridley Scott changed and why. Let's begin. Number 10. The siege that was too real. Before we talk accuracy, you have to understand the scale of Scott's ambition. His team didn't just read medieval sources, they studied them more obsessively than almost any historical film crew in Hollywood history. And in Morocco, Scott didn't build a movie set. He built a medieval world, trebuchets that really fired, siege towers that really rolled, walls tall enough to defend a kingdom, fire rigs that poured sheets of flame down stone like molten rivers. One night, when Scott ordered everything lit, burning projectiles began arcing across the sky. Villagers miles away believed a real war had broken out. They called authorities in panic. That's how real this film looked. That's how deep Scott dove into history. But even with all that realism, the story he told was not the one the chroniclers recorded, because Scott wasn't trying to reconstruct the past. He was trying to resurrect something inside it.
So I say let them come! Let them come!
Number 9. Balian, the bridge between centuries. In the film, Balian is someone modern audiences instantly understand. A grieving blacksmith searching for redemption, a reluctant knight drawn toward justice, a man who protects the helpless regardless of faith. He doubts, he questions, he chooses conscience over glory. And the moral clarity he carries, it doesn't just feel unusual for the 12th century. It doesn't appear in medieval texts at all. Those inner dilemmas aren't on the radar of the age. It's a powerful character. It's also a reinvention. The real Balian of Ibelin was born into one of the most influential noble families in the Levant. Educated, politically seasoned, deeply religious, married with children, and already standing at the center of Crusader authority long before Jerusalem's fall. Scott knew this. He had the sources. He changed Balian not out of ignorance, but intention. He didn't want a medieval lord. He wanted a guide. A character able to stand with one foot in the 12th century and one in the 21st, translating a world with utterly foreign values into a language modern viewers could feel. Balian isn't accurate, he's a bridge.
And we have made our preparations, as well as they can be made.
Number 8. A medieval world with modern souls. Throughout Kingdom of Heaven, something subtle and historically impossible keeps happening. People in the 12th century think like people in the 21st. Balian wrestles with personal conscience. Sibylla longs for autonomy. Tiberius rejects holy war on moral principle. Baldwin speaks with almost philosophical detachment about human folly. But none of this appears anywhere in medieval primary sources. If you read original sources, including the chronicles, the letters, the sermons, the laws, you will not find debates about personal identity, moral questioning of divine authority, or internal struggles framed around individual ethics. Those concepts simply did not exist. Medieval minds were shaped by divine order, inherited duty, sin, and salvation, and the absolute primacy of faith. Their worldview was built on foundations that don't map onto ours. And Ridley Scott knew this. He wasn't misreading the past, he was retranslating it. He gave medieval characters modern emotional vocabulary not because their world was inaccessible, but because he was shaping the Crusades into a story about the future he hoped we'd build. Scott wasn't trying to recreate their inner world. He was using their history to challenge ours. A story that looks backward to warn forward. Number 7. The moral map that never existed. In the film, the Crusades seem cleanly divided. Those who want peace, Baldwin, Balian, Tiberius, Saladin. And those who want destruction, Reynald, Guy, the Radical Templars. It's emotionally satisfying, but history doesn't divide that neatly. The real 12th century is full of leaders whose motives blur together. Devout yet pragmatic, ruthless yet honorable, compassionate in one moment, calculated in the next. Even Saladin, with a reputation as an incredibly just ruler, oversaw political purges, enforced harsh discipline, and used brutality when needed. Scott smooths this complexity on purpose, not to simplify, but to reveal a pattern that becomes essential in the film's final warning. Number 6. Armor that feels true, but isn't. Scott's team didn't guess their way through costuming. They went deep into real medieval armor. Crusader mail hauberks built from thousands of interlinked rings. Kite shields shaped exactly like 12th century originals. Ayyubid lamellar armor based on surviving plate designs. Arabic textiles woven in historically accurate patterns. The weight, movement, and silhouette feel astonishingly real. And then, the myth-making begins. Balian rides into battle without a helmet. Instant death in real life, but perfect for cinematic clarity. Saladin's elegant, iconic helmet, no 12th century precedent. It's designed for legend, not accuracy. Some armor appears decades too early, because visual storytelling communicates faster than subtitles ever could. Scott gets the texture of history right, then bends the details just enough to elevate it into myth. Number 5. Saladin, the man who leads without a mask. When Saladin enters the story, Scott frames him with the same solemn weight as Baldwin IV, the masked king whose presence had stunned the crew into silence. Baldwin is the king who hides behind a mask. Saladin is the king who never needed one. Scott shaped his Saladin primarily from Muslim chroniclers. Baha ad-Din, Imad ad-Din, Ibn al-Athir. Writers who remembered a ruler of discipline, restraint, and dignity. Those qualities are real, but he uses far less from Christian sources which describe political purges, heavy taxation, and calculated ruthlessness. The hard necessities of medieval leadership. None of this made Saladin monstrous. It made him normal for his age, but Scott chooses the idealized Saladin deliberately, not as fantasy, but as symbol. If Baldwin's mask represents a kingdom trying to hide its sickness, Saladin becomes the inverse. A leader whose strength needs no disguise, whose steadiness contrasts the chaos consuming Jerusalem. He isn't just a man from the past, he's a mirror held up to the present. Number 4. Sibylla, a queen shaped by tragedy, not history. Sibylla in the film is unforgettable. A woman torn between love and duty, a mother crushed beneath loss, and a queen who walks away from power. It's gripping, it's tragic, and almost entirely fictional. The real Sibylla was fiercely loyal to her husband Guy, remained queen, kept her political authority, and had no romance with Balian. She certainly never killed her son. Scott reshapes her because he needs Sibylla to carry the emotional burden of Jerusalem's fall. Her personal tragedy becomes the kingdom's tragedy. She is history transformed into myth. Number 3. The piece that could never have survived. The film makes it feel like Jerusalem could have survived if only a few men had chosen differently. If Baldwin had lived, if Guy had been removed, or if Reynald hadn't provoked Saladin. It creates the haunting sense that peace was almost within reach. The truth is far more complex. Jerusalem was designed for permanence, a sacred fortress city, anchored in stone and significance, meant to withstand siege and time alike. But its position made it irresistible, a crossroads coveted by empires where conflict was not an exception but a rhythm. Its fall wasn't written in the stars. It was the outcome of a world forever pushing against it. And even so, Jerusalem endured, and remarkably, it endures to this day. Under Baldwin IV, the kingdom held together for years. With wiser leadership, many historians believe Jerusalem could have survived longer, not indefinitely, but long enough to reshape the region. Its fall was not inevitable. It was timed. The wrong men rose to power inside the walls at the exact moment Saladin unified the world on the outside. The internal decay could not meet the external threat. Scott leans into this tragedy, not rewriting history, but revealing its cruel irony of timing. Survival felt close enough to imagine, yet never close enough to reach. Number 2. In the medieval world, religion wasn't a mask, it was the foundation. The film often frames holy war as a cover for ambition. People use religion for power, Balian says, a thoroughly modern idea. But in the 12th century, people did not see religion that way. Faith wasn't a tool they intentionally wielded. It wasn't an intentional strategy for power or a well-thought-out means of manipulation. It was the invisible architecture of their world. Faith shaped every law, every duty, every view of the world. And while religion certainly fueled power, medieval people didn't treat it as something separate they could step back from. It wasn't a strategy, it was the framework through which they understood reality itself. Scott doesn't adjust this out of confusion. He reshapes it because medieval faith wasn't just personal, it was political, legal, social, and cosmic all at once. No separate secular thought existed anywhere at that time. It was a worldview no modern audience fully shares, even the devout. So he reframes it, simplifies it, translates it, preparing us for what the film is really warning us about. Number 1. The warning Ridley Scott hid inside the fall of Jerusalem. Why did Scott change so much when he understood the history better than almost any director before him? Because Kingdom of Heaven isn't about the 12th century. It's about the 21st. Scott saw the same fractures in medieval Jerusalem that he saw forming in our world. Societies splitting into moderates and zealots, leaders turning faith into a weapon. Kingdoms collapsing not from invasion, but from division within, and people clinging to the illusion of stability even as the ground trembled beneath them. So he reshaped his characters into reflections of the present. Balian becomes a conscience. Sibylla becomes a warning. Saladin becomes an ideal, and Jerusalem becomes a mirror. The fall of the city isn't just history, it's a prophecy. A reminder that civilizations rarely crumble when enemies appear at the gate, but when the wrong people rise inside the walls. Scott's message is brutally simple. History doesn't repeat because we forget it. It repeats because we fail to recognize ourselves in it. That's why Kingdom of Heaven, inaccuracies and all, feels truer than many historical films. Not because it gets the facts right, but because the warning rings true. And now we return to the moment we started with. The day Baldwin IV walked onto the set, and the entire crew fell silent. Why did it haunt them? Because Baldwin is the embodiment of everything Scott was trying to say. The silver mask doesn't just hide a dying king, it hides a dying kingdom. A world split between zealots and moderates, held together by a leader who understands the peace he built cannot outlive him. A man who can barely touch the world, yet sees it more clearly than anyone around him. For a moment on set, the crew wasn't looking at prosthetics or makeup. They were looking at the story itself, the history and the warning, standing right in front of them. Baldwin is the bridge between the film's two truths. The historical truth, a kingdom held together by a single steady hand. And the modern truth, that civilizations fall the same way today, not from the outside, but from within. Baldwin isn't just a king resurrected, he is the thesis made flesh. The moment he stepped onto the set, Ridley Scott's entire message stepped with him. Now it's your turn. Do you agree with what Scott chose to do? Was he right to reshape history to deliver a warning? Or would you have told the story differently? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your take. And if you want to see history, myth, and filmmaking collide in an even stranger way, watch what we uncovered about the movie Troy with Brad Pitt. Click here to watch. Let's keep the legend alive.